morning. I'd like to introduce to you Roger Johnson. He is the person who is in charge of the laboratory and everything that goes on out there in the laboratory. And he can probably tell you a whole lot more about who he is and what he does than I can. Anyway, and don't be surprised if you see a few stragglers coming on in at 8:30 in the morning.
Listen, I've been there before.
Okay. So anyway, without any further ado, I will let Mr. Johnson talk with you.
Thank you. Morning, class.
Morning.
Say, this is quite a privilege. I enjoy teaching and I enjoy coming out and visiting with students. I'm a recruiter for medical technology. So if any of you happen to get the idea that maybe med-tech profession is on your mind and it's one of your goals to pursue, come see me. I'll help you get in the right direction and tell you what all's needed to get into that. And I understand that I'm on TV today.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
I should have mentioned that again. Thank you.
And to your remark, yes, I've been in college before, and let me tell you a little story to kind of make you relax this morning. One morning we went to class and we waited 10 minutes, we waited 15 minutes, waited 20 minutes, still no professor. Well, the talk was getting such, hey, let's see, if they've got a bachelor's degree, we wait 5 minutes. If they got a master's degree, we can wait 15. We wait 30 minutes if they got a PhD. Well, at 25 minutes, we decided we had waited long enough. So we all lined up and we was proceeding out the door. Half the class was gone. I was about fourth one from the door when the professor walks in. He has a PhD, mind you. He walks into the classroom. Well, needless to say, the ones that left got an F for the day. The rest of us had to take a pop quiz. And so it wasn't too enlightening class, you know. We all had to live through that. Today I was asked to speak on confidentiality. Somebody want to give me a definition for confidentiality? Boy,
Yeah, go ahead.
I know it's 8:30 in the morning, but goodness.
Shana, tell me what confidentiality is.
I usually, I don't know,
Put it in your own words, how you feel it is.
that whatever I tell you would just be between us two.
Yeah, you just tell me. I'm not putting anybody on the spot. I just want the class to get involved. See, if we get involved, you keep your senses up here, alert, and you catch on to what's going on, okay? And you remember a lot more. So, tell me what you think in your own words. Now, I'm not going to let them laugh at you, okay? Just tell me what you think. Then somebody else can tell me, and then I'll tell you what I think it is, and then we'll have several people that have ideas about what it is.
I guess, I don't know, but
Never used it. What if, let's go through it this way. You all have been involved where a lady comes up and she says, Joni, come here. Listen, let me tell you something. So she goes, rattles off a little story. Now, can you keep a secret? Joni says, oh yeah, I can keep a secret. But what happens? The minute she's out away from Jane, she's running over here to Susie. Hey, Susie, have you heard? And blah, 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 blah. It's all gone. Confidentiality is a secret. And you got to keep that secret. And sometimes we trust individuals to do that. And what happens if you find out it comes back to you and that secret is out and it was something personal?
you don't trust her anymore.
You don't trust her. We lose trust. Okay. We need to learn this from little on because it's very important in our society. It's good for communication. It's good for respect for one another, and it helps us to grow. Well, in business, it's very important. We must maintain confidentiality in a lot of businesses. For example, schools, banks, attorneys, profession. All of these must maintain a certain amount of confidentiality. For example, attorneys have records of people that come in there with problems. Until they're ready to let society know about it, it comes over the news or whatever, that date is kept right there in record, and only the attorney and their client knows about it. In the medical profession, let's just say somebody has AIDS. You don't want that out, goodness, that's terrible. And what if somebody just told another patient that came in, hey, John Doe over here has AIDS. The next thing you know, it's all over town, and you see people, Susie over here's got AIDS. You get the picture of how you got to keep this stuff quiet? Now that is what confidentiality is. It's keeping a secret, keeping things to yourself. In our profession, we have to keep all records as a secret. Only the patient and the physician should know it. Now, Gretchen, there are other people, such as myself, that must see those charts periodically. There are certain things I've got to look up in the charts. And I run across things like, well, maybe AIDS, or maybe these people have GC, or something like that. But I saw that. That's as far as it goes. Now, every institution has a policy. And the policy is written up to guide each person as to how to handle confidentiality. Now, at our institution, we not only have the policies, but when you go to work there, you're handed an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with all this writing on here about confidentiality. And your name's up there at the top. I, Roger Johnson. And it continues through and says that I will abide by the policy, that I will uphold confidentiality. And it also goes to state that if I break confidentiality, that I stand to lose my job. And there's a lot of places out there that if you break confidentiality, bye, see you tomorrow, someplace else. So we have to keep things like that secretive. And there are laws that govern these things, you know. For example, there's laws written as to how we handle drug screens, how we handle AIDS. Do you all realize that I'm not even allowed to know that we got a patient in there that's got AIDS? That's between that patient and the doctor. The nurses can't know. The law says they can't let it out. It's confidential. Confidentiality's got to be upheld. We feel that we ought to know, so we can take extra steps in protecting ourselves. Even though we wear gloves and wear masks and that sort of thing, we feel like we ought to know so that we can take the extra precautions. But the law says we're not allowed to know. The nice thing about the laboratory is that most patients that come through, we know about their disease before the doctor does. Can somebody tell me what medical technology is, or laboratory technologies? Anybody have an idea of what we do? Okay, that's one thing we do. Very good, very good. We analyze all body fluids. That means blood. That means synovial fluid, which is knee fluid. They'll even aspirate fluid from around the heart, from in the lung. And we can do microbiology on it, we can run chemical studies on it, we can run counts on it, find out how many white cells are present and what kind. This all aids the doctor in making a diagnosis. There are certain tests that we run that helps the doctor to treat the patient. So we a lot of times know, well, at least I do, on HIV, and I'll get into that. At our place for handling HIV and drug screens, there has to be one person or two that's set up that handles the reports. And at our place, they have designated me as the person to handle that. Now what we do, we get an order for an HIV. We draw the blood. The phlebotomists are not to discuss it with other phlebotomists or with the techs. They bring the blood in and the requisition. And then the tech that is spinning the blood down, getting the serum or the clear portion off of the blood, pours that clear portion into another tube and labels it. But the name does not go on the tube. We have a logbook and we write the name in it. The techs know where the logbook is. I know where the logbook is, but nobody else does. And there's a number that is given to that HIV. And that number goes on the request when we send it in to have it run. Then when the report comes back, all I see is that code number up there. So I dig out the logbook, find out who it belongs to. I get 3 reports, so I write the name on 2 of them. The one that I don't write a name on goes into my personal file. The 2 that I write the name on, one goes to the physician, and I've got to put it in an envelope, seal the envelope, and write confidential lab results on it. Then I have to hand deliver that to the physician. We don't mail it. We don't send it by courier. I have to deliver it in case somebody gets a hold of that and decides to put the heating arm to it and pop the envelope open. But anyway, I deliver it to the physician, and then I take the other copy and take it into medical records. The medical records puts it in that patient's chart. Now, if it happens to be a patient that's in-house, I don't even take it up there and put it on the chart on the floor. Anybody tell me why?
It's all nurses.
Right. So I take it down. The name of the game in this is the least amount of people handling the report, you have less people knowing about it, right? So I take it to medical records and they put it in the chart. The drug screens work similarly. Although ER, or that's emergency room, collects the specimens. And they come into the ER, collect the specimens, bring them over to me. I call the courier, and the courier comes and picks them up. But these have been collected in a bottle. It's always urine. Once in a blue moon, they'll have us draw a blood specimen for it. But the drugs that they're testing for in the blood is the same as what they're testing for in the urine. Now you have to understand that all the abuse drugs that we're talking about are excreted via the urinary tract. And so that is the most likely place to test for it, because you may clear it out of the bloodstream, but it's still being filtered through, and so you're going to catch it in traces of it in the urinary situation. Now, they collected, we collect for a number of companies. We got Walmart, for example. They come in, and I told Walmart, yeah, I will do that, no problem. Well, when they brought up their big box in there, I looked at that thing and I said, what have I got myself into? I'd already made the price of how much it would cost to collect it. Well, it's easy for ER because Walmart people bring in their own form. And that form has to go along with your urine specimen because it's a chain of custody. Can anybody tell me what would happen if every person didn't sign on it that handled it?
It would be invalid.
Right. So they're afraid that it might be tampered with. And so it's no good. And once in a while we have to recollect. But anyway, they fill this form out, and part of it goes into the box, part of it comes to me. Well, after it comes to me, I've got to prepare a Federal Express package. So I've got about 4 or 5 items I've got to take care of before I send it out. I'm already thinking I got to go up in price, man. I spend 15 to 30 minutes just getting it ready for Federal Express, all the paperwork that they want done. But it's,
How much does it cost?
to Walmart, we're charging $10. That's because they wanted to come on with us, and another hospital was collecting it. But in order for them to come on with us, we had to charge the same fee as what the other hospital was doing. And they preferred us because we're right here. So I said, okay, we'll go along with it. Our normal price is $41 for a drug screen if a patient has it done. But to a company, I charge $33. Now that gets you your drug screen and gets the collection. It's all inclusive. If you collect for Covington Air, we get $15 collection on it. We collect for Edward D. Jones. Understand he's a broker downtown. We charge $15 for collection. The reference lab charges the company then for processing the urine specimen. Then when the reports come back, then I have to look up there, and it says OMH for the collecting station, and then they put up their Green Country. Okay. So that alerts me that, hey, this report goes to Green Country. And I take a copy of that. There's usually 3 copies. And I take a copy of that and send out to Green Country, to Mr. Painter. The other copy then goes into medical records to go into the chart. And then if the 3rd copy, if they specify an MRO that should get it, then I send it to the MRO. If not, I just send the extra copy out to whoever, Kelco, Green Country, OSU Tech, whatever. Let me tell you how important this stuff is. I remember here some time ago that there was a director of nursing. She had a secretary. And this secretary overheard them talking about a baby that was just born and had Down syndrome. So she picks up the phone, calls her friend down at some real estate agency, and talks to her about it. She's unaware that the grandma works there. Well, when the lady gets off the phone, she just blurts out that the baby had Down syndrome. Well, the grandmother, being very concerned about her daughter, calls her husband and tells him. So they both leave their jobs, meet at the hospital, and go to their daughter's side and start consoling their daughter. The daughter is totally unaware of the situation. Can you imagine the anxiety? The doctor has not had a chance to go in and explain to the patient about her baby. Now, that's why we've got to watch how we handle these things. And as a result, the secretary is no longer with the firm. It took them about 15 minutes, and she was out the door. You know, sometimes I wish we could do that in private life, you know. Remember the little story about whispering over here to Joni? That happens so often. And I have to say, well, that's just human beings, but it goes back deeper than that. I think it applies to integrity. Integrity. And we won't go into that because I want to get into drug screens, and I know how it is at the end of class, because I've been there. That bell rings, and you're like a jet airplane. Shoo, and you're out of the hood.
Only we don't have bells, so.
Oh, you don't have
No.
bells.
What else?
Everybody sits there and watches their wristwatches. Another story I'd like to bring out is that it happened to me. And it happened here at this hospital. We had a physician call up and he says, I need the HIV report on so-and-so. Well, doctor, you know the rules. We can't give that to you over the phone. He says, I don't care. That's my patient, and I want to know the results now. Doctor, I'm sorry. We just can't do that. He says, look, he says, I'm telling you, it's my patient, and I want the results. Give it to me now. So our tech gave the results out. About 15 minutes later, or 20, I was sitting down in the administrator's office, getting chewed out because our laboratory broke confidentiality. And it took us quite a little bit to prove what had transpired. As a result, you're all wondering what happened to me. I'm still there. We got our point across. But those things can happen. And you never know when somebody's going to feel that confidentiality has been broken and what kind of society we live in. The word litigate, you ever heard of that? Medical profession probably is number one, tops getting sued all the time for things just such as that.
Who was it that made the complaint?
The complaints?
The complaint that you had violated confidentiality.
Oh, you all would know the doctor.
Well, I don't mean, the doctor himself complained?
Yeah. Right after he asked for it, I see where you're coming from. Okay. Right after he asked for the results, he turned around and picked up the phone and called the administrator and says, I think laboratory broke confidentiality. They gave me the results over the phone. Yeah. Didn't explain that he had ordered us to give it. As a result, I spent the rest of that day off and on in the administrator's office. Sometimes by myself, sometimes with a group of other people. Going back over the policy to make certain that we were following the policy. And I'm a real stickler for sticking to the rules. I get a lot of complaints because, Roger, rules are made to be broken. No, not in this case. And so, by sticking by the rules, I'm still there. And the rule is, if you break it, I'll see you on the other side of the river. So, remember that, class. You know, remember when somebody gives you that info, keep it to yourself. Unless they tell you, you can tell somebody else. Because you could lose a good friend that way. Drug screens. Everybody's interested in drug screens. I don't know how many phone calls I get during the week, but I get a lot of phone calls wanting to know different things about drugs. Everybody here interested in drugs? What they do? Okay? Everybody's scared to raise their hand.
Well, I'm interested.
Okay. Drug screens was created, and we're adding more to it all the time, the different drugs that we can analyze. Over the years, people have found out that the side effects of certain chemicals can do certain things to the body. And young people, as well as old people, feel that they've got to have this added little jazz to make them feel good. When in essence, if we could have some kind of a fluoroscope to watch how it's affecting our organs, we would be amazed. I'm going to tell you a personal story. My son was probably in the 5th grade. And it was back in those years when kids were sniffing glue. Now, I happened to come by his door, which was ajar a little bit, and I saw what he was doing. And I knocked on the door. He said, "Come in." Being that age, he wasn't even scared that I was going to find him with this glue. He says, "Dad, have you ever tried this?" He says, "Man, take a sniff of this." Forget it, man. I says, "Nobody's ever sat down and told you what that stuff's going to do to your brain?" No. I said, "Just a minute." I went back out to my library. I pulled out books. He's 5 years old. He's not going to know the difference. So I pulled out fungus books, chemical books, everything that showed from A to Z your different organs and what can happen. So I laid these pictures out there to show what the brain looked like if fungus took over, if certain chemicals took over, how the cells look. I mean, this is icky looking. Is that the word you all use? You know? And the liver just looked like something that's been laying out behind the barn for about 15 years. But he says, "Is that really what happens?" I said, "That's exactly what happens. But you can't see that, can you?" No. You know, from that day on, I never had a bit of problem out of it. To this day, you don't mention drugs to him if you don't want to be hit. That word is a nasty word to him, and he hates it. Now, this guy's a 245-pound football player, played for USFL. So, you know, people don't argue with you too much. And, but people find they need crutches. Doctors get on it. Good friend of mine. I was out in Shattuck working for the Little Males of the West. That was one of the Little Males of the West. Our only competition was Scott White out of Temple, Texas. And this fella had taken his residency and as a 5th-year student down at Shattuck. Of course, his folks lived at Shattuck. In fact, I lived here. If you went across the alley, his folks lived there. He became a neurosurgeon. And due to the pressures and the long hours, he got started on drugs to give him a boost to keep going those long hours. Then it got so he had to take some downers to settle him down at night so he could get some sleep. The next morning, they were still in his system. So he got up off the druggie, so he gave him some uppers to boost him up. This guy was a 4.0 all the way through school. He ended up, his partner put him through, there's a place back east that they send the doctors to that get in trouble with drugs, to dry them out. He went through that program, came back, practiced about 3 or 4 months, and was right back where he started. Today, I don't know what he's doing, but I can tell you, he's not practicing medicine. He don't have a license. He can never get a license again. It's sad to know that a person of this caliber that could help you and me if we had a car accident, if we on the job was injured and needed some brain surgery, that this intelligent, very capable, competent individual could do that for us. And now, he's sitting on the outside, looking in. just because he felt like he needed something to help as a crutch to get him over it. And that's how everybody gets started. Alcohol, social drink, won't hurt you. 1 or 2 drinks, we can handle that. Yeah, you can. There are people out there, you have to understand, there are people out there that can take that social drink. They can take it or leave it. But there are people that take that 1 drink. Man, they gotta have 2, 3, 4, 5. And the next night they gotta go back. There's that drive to do it. And if you don't know whether it's you or not, then why even take the first drink? You know, I'm not trying to put a big picture out here to scare you. I'm not trying to put a big picture to condemn the people that drink. I'm just trying to tell you that it's there. Now, I'm very open-minded. It's your choice. And if you get in trouble and come with a seizure to the hospital, I'll be there to help you. Okay? But that choice is yours, and I want you to be able to have that knowledge so that you can decide on your own what you want to do with your life. Okay? Now, alcohol. What it does is it affects the nervous system, central nervous system. It slows down the electrical impulses. So when you're driving, you're real slow. You can't quite make it to the brake. You can't quite make it to the foot feed, you know. And there's a car coming real fast. Oh, he's on that side of the road when actually he's right here, so your eyes aren't focusing properly. It did this practically ever since in the system. Now, it depends on what state you're in as to what they consider intoxication. Usually somewhere's around 1.0, 1.5, you're intoxicated. You get up to 3 point and death can occur. Between 2.5, 3 in that area, death can occur because you have slowed everything down to the point you have anesthetized the very nerves that supply heartbeat, that supply the functions within the brain, and therefore you cease to function. So alcohol's, you know, a beer, 1 beer stays in you, we can still pick it up 8 hours later. 1 beer, and that's from the grocery store. It would be a little longer if you went down to the liquor store because the content is higher. Okay? Let's go to salicylates. These rascals first stimulate you, give you a lot of boost. And then depression sets in. It does the same thing as alcohol. Most of these drugs that I'm going to talk about affect the nervous system. All except one of them has a different mode of absorption. They all are absorbed and broken down in the liver. That's why the liver is overworked when you take drugs. That's why the liver looks like it's been fried and left out in the sun for 30 days behind the woodshed, which eventually we call what? CA of the liver. Okay? Now, salicylates stay in the system for about 15 to 30 hours. That's a long time. So, if you take salicylates at 6 o'clock in the morning and decide you're going to take it again at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you're compounding your situation. So it's multiplying. Now, barbiturates, they also act on the neural system, but it's a little different. Picture a wire or a nerve ending coming out this way and also out from here. This is called the synapses, and the spark jumps across, or the electrical impulse jumps across this. There's fluid in here, and it conducts the electrical impulse across that. What that does is gets into that fluid and blocks the impulse coming across. And therefore, the signal can't get through to the next organ. Okay, does that make sense? All right? Is that boring? No?
I was tired.
Oh, I've been down that route. Stayed up till 2, 3 in the morning, then go back to class at 7:30 in the morning. Okay. Barbiturates. Barbitol, phenobarbital. Does those ring a bell with you? Phenobarbital. Hey, let me tell you something. You all like stories, don't you? You like stories? Back in college, I was a sophomore, and I lettered in practically all the sports in college. Well, the doctor says, Roger, I found an ulcer. You cannot play sports this year. I says, what if I sign a paper eliminating you guys from any responsibility? Can I play sports? Yeah. So they drew it up and I signed it. Well, we were playing Wichita State, and I played goalie. I love to call off my fullbacks, and I'd run out there, dive after the ball, and just as the guy's kicking, I would rake the ball in, and I had it. They had to back off so I could kick the ball back out to them. Well, I misjudged. I got the shoe right here. Well, they had to wait. They couldn't substitute till the end of the quarter. So I had to wait till the end of the quarter. By the time the end of the quarter was, needless to say, and I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings, but we had talked the coach into letting us wear warm-ups. The goalie could wear warm-ups. Because my knees, I wore knee pads underneath that. I had big scabs on them from diving on the grass and sliding. Well, my warm-ups were turning red. It's the only time in my lifetime I ever got my dad to come to a ball game. And he had to be there at Wichita. He drove me back home. I was put in the hospital and they said I had to have surgery. No. I'm strong, I'm young, I got willpower, and I'll heal myself. Well, they gave me ice to stop the bleeding, gave me medication. One of these was phenobarbital. I was dismissed from the hospital, went back to college, and I'm studying biochemistry, you know, just cutting up, didn't know what I was doing. The professor, he had the same name as I did, Professor Johnson. He calls back to my physician, and he says, hey, can we take Roger off of that? He's disrupting class. But you have no sense of reality. Everything can go. And you have, it's just freedom. And that's why people take it. But it was supposed to calm down the nerves around my ulcers so it would heal. And that was the purpose. But he had given me too large a dose. So I was feeling what some of the druggies were feeling. Benzodiazepine. Oh, what did they come up with these big, long, hard to pronounce names? You ever get names like that in this class or other classes? The other classes, big words. Well, you have to realize I'm an old farmer and it took me years to pronounce some of this stuff. Anyway, this depresses the central nervous system and also the cardiovascular system. It slows it down. Okay? It takes 2 to 6 days before you get that out of the system. Of the drugs, you'll recognize names under benzodiazepine is Valium. And you can get hooked on Valium. My aunt was placed on Valium for over 25 years. Her doctor died, and the new doctor came in and found out she was on Valium. zap, he took her off of it. You don't do that. You graduate him off of it. He has destroyed that lady. I don't even know her. She doesn't know me. And she was fine while she was on Valium. But there are other people. I know my wife has read books of movie stars that's been on Valium, and they've got their life straightened out. But you can get hooked on that stuff, and you've got to have it day in and day out. And you can't just stop taking it. But it gives you a sense of freedom, gives you a calmness. Now, I took the Dale Carnegie course, and there were some people that got up in front of the class like this. And man, those poor people, I felt sorry for them. Man, they couldn't talk. They were petrified. They couldn't even get out a word. By the end of the class, they were speaking fluently. People can take value, and they can get up in front of anybody. It doesn't bother them, because it deadens the senses and it calms the nerves. Librium is another name for benzodiazepine, another drug that is used. Cocaine, we've all heard of that. It's used as an anesthetic. You get the feeling of euphoria. It causes a variety of psychopathology situations. You become neurotics during that state. See, all of these things affect the nervous system and what your brain cells made of. Mostly nerves, right? There's tissue, but there's nerves, electrical impulses. We've got a wonderful computer. It'll outdo anything that this computer group down here at Tech will do. It's wonderful. And we'll repair ourselves if we treat ourselves right, by sleep, by eating the right foods. We have a tremendous manufacturing system right here on 2 wheels. It's great. But if you take these things, it starts destroying the electrical system within our bodies. 2 days. It stays in for 2 days. Just one dose stays there 2 days. Opiates. That's heroin. Codeine and morphine come under opiates. And those are used for painkillers. Well, it does the same thing as cocaine does, in the fact that euphoria sets in for a short time, and then irritability comes in, and then you have depression, and paranoia sets in. That's the steps. So these people that take these drugs go through this every time they take it. That's the steps they come. Now, we have the 3rd floor up there that we deal with people that are emotionally unstable. And we try to help them. Depression is one of the areas. Depression is a sickness. It's an illness just like anything else. And these people, when they're in deep depression, don't even know. They can't rationalize. There's a short circuit. We don't know why it short circuits. We haven't found that out yet. But you can cause that short circuit by taking heroin. And that stays in 5 to 8 hours on that. So it's a fast one. It comes through real fast. Cannabinoids. Anybody want to take a stab at that one? What is the common name for it? Yeah, marijuana. Grass. Grass, the stick, the weed. There's a number of terms applied to it. And they're also finding out there's 2 things about marijuana. In some cases, people that are suffering from certain illnesses, they can see that the research is real early, but they can see some changes that help them. But in all the rest of the people. It does the same thing that the other drugs do. And it's the only one that is absorbed differently. The minute you take a draw on that weed, then it's drawn into your lungs and it's absorbed directly into the brain, where the others have to go through a synthesis and the system get into the bloodstream and then carried to different parts of the body. This one goes directly to the brain. So off of one drag, you're getting within 15 seconds, you're getting your high. So that is a real quick fix. But it stays in the system longer. It stays in for approximately 20 to 30 days. We can pick it up. Now I'll tell you a quick story. I was working at another hospital and this guy wanted to get on at the downtown at the city, with the city. And he had a drug screen. He came back positive for marijuana. Well, they wouldn't hire him. He said, I don't smoke marijuana. What are you guys doing to me? Well, they got to investigating and found out he had a friend that he chummed around with that smoked marijuana. And he would ride with him in his car. You know what happened? He inhaled that smoke. He became positive. So if you hang around friends that smoke marijuana, you're going to show up positive just as much as the person that's doing the smoking. And eventually we got this guy his job. I told him to stay away from his friend for 30 days, come back in and see me, and we'd send it back in. And we did, and it was negative. But it is the longest one of all the others to excrete out of the system.
It also stores itself in fatty tissue of the body.
Right. Because of the chemical nature, it has an affinity to the fatty tissues. Very good point. And it goes in there and it stays. That's why it takes so long to get out, and why we can test for it 20 days later and they're still positive.
What are some drugs that, or things that can show false positives?
Well,
Or are there? We hear that there are, and there are also that we hear that there are things that can be immediately put into the urine that will eliminate traces of the chemical if a person is trying to get a job. And is that something, do we just hear that, or is that true? Do people?
putting things in to suppress it is kind of a wives' tale thing, okay? But what people do is that they buy normal urine. And let me tell you, these people come in. Now, we don't frisk them. We take their word for it, but we do take their coat off. The purse from the ladies has to be checked in at the station. What happens is, it's amazing, and because we have a mixed crew and all, even though we're young adults in here, I'll let your mind imagine some of the points of where they hide these things. It's unbelievable how they carry in small vials, and when they get into the bathroom, that they pour the normal urine into the container, and then they got normal urine.
We did a urine test at the National Guard.
Uh-huh.
You have to actually just stand there and watch and take the
Right.
picture, but you never close the door in between you and them for that simple reason.
There are some companies that require us to do it. Others, we follow this procedure. The door's left open. They go in, wash their hands, dry their hands. Then they step to the side. We take security tape and run across the faucet, over the valve, down over the spigot, and back underneath. Now, those things are so thin that the least touching on that will rip it, and then we know that they've tampered with it. We explain that to them. We take them through each step while they're watching us do it. We also, we're supposed to put a dye in the stool. And it takes quite a bit of urine. Well, not quite a bit, probably a couple of cc's, which is a small amount, to turn the dye. Now, I pinch pennies. So I just went down to the cafeteria and got their coloring for their cake. And so I asked for blue coloring and they poured it in there. It works the same way. And I don't have to pay the big bucks out for their dye.
Yeah, what if you had to go to the bathroom
Huh?
after you fill the cut?
After you fill the cut,
Yeah.
you hold it at that point. You knock on the door. You tell them that you've got it collected. You pass it through, you go to the bathroom. Because it'll nullify the whole thing. Because if that dye changes in there, we know, we suspicion that you have exchanged. We can't say you did. We can only suspicion. Say, because we can get in trouble if we do, if we point at you and say, you didn't take and urinate into the cup. You urinated into the stool.
If a person gets a positive result, do they get another test just in case there is something? I mean, aren't there some
Okay.
prescription drugs or other things
Well,
that will cause
prescription
you
drug
to?
shows up in these.
Everything will show up, I know, but,
Let me explain that to you this way. All of these benzodiazepine, that's a family. I gave you families and then I gave you some specific drugs under that in some cases. On the screen, all we're doing is checking for families. Is this group of drugs present? Is this group of drugs present? If benzodiazepine is positive, what we do is go into what we call a confirmation. It's another test. So then it breaks it out with all the other drugs, and we can pinpoint which drug it is and in what amounts it's present. And so we know then exactly what's there. And all the tests are specific for it. Now, there are certain foods out on the market, except some of those herbal teas, for example. Well, you have to understand, these drugs are made from herbal vines, a lot of it. So that's what causes it, why it comes up as a cross reaction and can be there. And we can't tell either way. Hey, listen, class, I appreciate you inviting me out here. Thank you very much. I've had fun. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I wish you all the luck in the world in your furthering your education. Thank you.